So, following the 7 year hiatus and the death of original frontman Chester Bennington, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Linkin Park is back with a new singer, a new drummer. Um, and I definitely have some issues with this album, most of which come from just the concept of trying to replace Chester at all, then who they replaced him with on top of that, and what that ended up bringing into the band and bringing into the mainstream. Like, Linkin Park is a huge band with a enormous following. Like, they are definitely one of the most popular bands in the world. They may not have as much recognition in the US as they used to have in the early 2000s, but they have done nothing but grow and grow and grow over the years globally. That was one of the beautiful things about Chester and Linkin Park, is just the way that he was able to put words together with the music in a way that's so palatable and easily digestible and understandable for the average listener. Things that, most people have experienced in their life, whether it be trauma from a relationship or a family member, or depressive thoughts, suicidal thoughts, like all these things that so many people struggle with on a daily basis, and which in the end ended up leading to the tragic suicide of Chester. For Mike to turn around just 2 years after the death of Chester Bennington and pick somebody like Emily Armstrong to fill the shoes, vocally I can see why Mike would choose to go that direction, but given her background and her history and everything that just comes with that, it just honestly didn't seem like a very good idea. It's almost as dumb as picking, I don't know, somebody like RFK to run the Department of Health, or Matt Gaetz to be the Attorney General. Maybe not quite as bad, but like, Chester was the kind of person who really spoke through his music, oftentimes about things that were too difficult to say in regular everyday conversation. Again, the idea of mental health and abuse, and for Mike to turn around and pick somebody like Emily Armstrong, who comes from such a high-ranking family in the Church of Scientology, a church which, mind you, doesn't believe in mental health issues, doesn't believe in homosexuality, that has so many allegations of covering up sexual assaults, whether it be with adults or children or what have you. Like, these are all things that Chester actively stood against and spoke up about, and we just don't really seem to be getting that from Emily. But that being said, we don't know what her personal life is like. She may have defected from the church, or maybe in the process of defecting from the church. We don't know, and we probably never will know. I really went into this album trying to separate the art from the artist and just appreciate the music for what it is. But given what Linkin Park has been for the past 20 years, it is really hard to separate those two things. I really wanted to try to let the music speak for itself. That being said, let's hop into the track by track analysis. First of all, the intro to the album. I'm not gonna lie, it didn't get me. I did a huge eye roll when I first started listening to this at work. Like, that whole bit about, oh, from zero, like from nothing, oh, you're old, and it just cuts out right there. Like, we've heard it in all the interviews, we get it, like, from zero, we understand where this comes from. You don't need to drive it home any further than this. That being said, the Emptiness Machine, like, while it does come off as a bit derivative of like that Transformer era of Linkin Park, which honestly some people love, and I can understand that, it was a really solid introduction for Emily into the band. Her voice blends very well with the rest of the music, and the back and forth between her and Mike works really well. It really does kind of like shepherd in this new era of Linkin Park. The mix is fantastic. Honestly, hearing the first chorus with just Mike on his own gives you like a small taste of like what could have been had Linkin Park decided not to replace Chester and just go on with Mike as the frontman. And honestly, that's something I really would have enjoyed seeing. It sounds, based on this song alone, it sounds like it could have been really, really good. That being said, Emily's voice does work really well in the song, and the fact that she comes in for the second verse as like the grand introduction to the new vocalist of Linkin Park. That's exactly how it was played in the first live performance of the song at the From Zero show. Like, it works really well. All in all, it is one of the better songs from the album. But then we come to Cut the Bridge, the second song on the album. It's another fantastic vocal delivery from Mike and respectable rhyming schemes in his verses, but then the gang vocals just kind of fall flat and come off as like a bit cheesy. There's a decent fill in there to kind of showcase what Colin's able to do as a drummer, but all in all, those are really the only things of note in this song. It's just kind of comes off as filler. Then we get to Heavy as the Crown, which is the big hit that everybody loves from the Arcane music video and the live performance and debut of it. It is another wonderful vocal delivery from Mike that harkens back to that Minutes to Midnight era flow that he had. But then the chorus kind of comes off as an attempt to be tongue-in-cheek, this is what you asked for, heavy as the crown, but it just comes off as a bit too ham-fisted and a bit almost insulting to the audience, like hey, you wanted to see us come back and we came back, and if you don't like the new singer, then you're just going to have to deal with it. This is Linkin Park now, which on one hand I can kind of respect because they're artists, and at the end of the day, artists should be able to create art however they see fit. But when you're a band as big as Linkin Park with as huge of a global following as they have, like, these are some things that you probably should take into account. Like, you don't really want to go out there and intentionally try to piss off your fans. The structure, though, it's so similar to Given Up, like, honestly, a little bit too much. Like, from the rapping verses to the repetitive chorus, all the way up to the long scream towards the end of the song. It's almost like trying to directly compare Emily to Chester. Like, no, see, she's good. She can do all the things that Chester can do, which I don't think a lot of people want to see. It's not like, there are going to be people that are going to compare the two, but I don't think the average listener, or the average Linkin Park fan really wants to see that and just kind of have that shoved into their face that, like, no, she's Chester. She's the new Chester. And then to turn around and be like, well, nobody can ever replace Chester in the band. Like, that just doesn't seem to be how this song kind of comes off. The bridge seems really out of place. It just doesn't quite fit the rest of the song to me. The whole tired of explaining what the joke is just kind of harkens back to that, the intro of the album and all of the interviews that he's done since the announcement of Emily Armstrong as the vocalist and the new album. Like, we get it. It's From Zero. Like your old band. Ha 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 ha. Move on. After that, we come to Over Each Other, which really seems to be the first song on the album that Emily really had a big part in writing. I think this is one of the handful of songs that really showcases what Linkin Park could be now if they would just stop trying to recapture lightning in the bottle that they had with Chester. Like, that's never going to happen. Emily's softer side is really portrayed well and showcased wonderfully here. Lyrically, it sounds like something that Chester could have maybe written before his passing. It's another one of those songs that, like, anybody who's ever been in a relationship can relate to. Like, when you're just so heated and it's so emotional and you're arguing with your partner, and at the end of the day, you guys aren't really even communicating. You're just shouting at each other. You're just getting it off your chest, and then you start wondering, like, is this it? Is this what our relationship is? At the end of the day, is it worth it? My only complaint with the song really is that I wish it was longer. I wish that we had more opportunity to hear what Emily is able to do in this kind of style of song. After that, we come into Casualty, which, I'm not gonna lie, I was shocked at how good her harsh vocals were, and the intro of this song really almost came off as them trying to do more of a extreme metal kind of style song, but then it immediately takes a hard 180 into this, like, weird attempt at, like, a punk rock anthem. Like, Mike's attempt at more aggressive vocal delivery, like, it's appreciated and I respect it, but it just doesn't quite hit home for me. It's not what Mike is known for. I think with a little more refinement and some practice, it could probably be done really well, but it just does not work for me in this song. The lyrics are kind of weak, almost like Mike is just trying too hard to tap into that angsty teenager that he was during the Hybrid Theory era and the Meteora era. We get certain lines like bleached in the eye. Like, what the hell does that even mean in the context of this song? There's no other line before or after this to make this line make sense. It just seems like, what's something that sounds brutal and painful? Oh, dude, bleaching your eye. That would suck. That would really suck. Let's throw that in the song. But just a weird song that just didn't quite fit on the album for me. But, I mean, it's not the worst thing that I've heard. After that, we come into Overflow, which, I mean, the piano in the beginning really harkens back to In the End, like almost a bit too much. Like, it's the same notes, just kind of rearranged. And we get some more just weird middle school level lyrical content and rhyming schemes. We get weird lines like white sky to black hole, sunlight to shadow. It all just screams r/I'm 14 and this is deep. That mixed in with the kind of Imagine Dragons vibes that we get, like, it's not exactly a bad sound. Like, I unironically am kind of a fan of Imagine Dragons, but it just all kind of accumulates into this just meh song. Two-Faced, which has been lovingly dubbed by the online community as One Step Closer Part 2. And honestly, they're not wrong. It's nice to hear Linkin Park kind of harken back to their Hybrid Theory era, which is something a lot of people have been asking for years. But there's a difference between returning to that sound and completely copying it verbatim in such a formulaic and derivative way. It is once again another solid performance from Mike on the album. It's literally like the same chord progression in the same key, same riffs, just kind of chopped up and rearranged to sound like something slightly different, all the way up to the Stop Yelling at Me breakdown, which is from the vocal delivery to the breakdown itself to the return of Joe Hahn and the turntables during the breakdown. It literally sounds exactly like the breakdown in One Step Closer, to the point where like it could even maybe be considered a response to One Step Closer, like shut up when I'm talking to you and stop yelling at me. It's almost like a call and response, but it just comes off as so forced and, again, derivative, just like a lot of everything else on this album. It's nice to hear Joe back on the turntables, and it's nice to hear Linkin Park go back to that a bit more aggressive, angsty sound, but it's not in this way. Like, this is something that I've been wanting to hear from Linkin Park, but not really like a shot-for-shot remake of the original song. It just comes off weird and forced. And from there, we come into Stained, which is probably one of the best songs on the album. It's another example of what I believe is Emily really being able to take the reins on a song. There's not really a whole lot to talk about with this song other than the fact that it's just really good, and it's a really good vocal performance from Emily. Like, that aggressive and angry Sia or Katy Perry kind of vocal delivery that she has throughout the song, just like it really hits well for me. And this is somebody who was not the biggest fan of like the idea of Emily replacing Chester in the band, but after hearing some of the songs on this album, like, it could be done well. And this is just an example of that. But then from Stained, we get into arguably one of the worst songs on the album, which is Iggy. It's following one of those stupid tropes of making a song name an acronym. Like, I Gave You Everything I Had would have been a decent name for a song, but no, we had to break it down into a stupid acronym for some reason. Once again, giving those r/I'm 14 and this is deep vibes. The lyrics, just like some of the other lyrics throughout the album, are just kind of poor. Like, they've been working on this album for years, and we get something that sounds like a preteen could have written this for a middle school project, and it probably would have gotten like a beat. That being said, it's just the concept and the imagery of a devil with a god complex in the song, like that. I feel like there's a lot that could be unpacked there, and they just don't. It's just a throwaway line in the song, pretty much. And then just the repetition at the end of the song, like, we get it. You don't need them. Move on. We do not need a minute of this. Like, this line is not something that is good enough to justify the repetition that it gets at the end of the song. Then following that, we get possibly the best song on the album, "Good Things Go." It's kind of this slow song that gets really deep and really personal, and it's something that again harkens back to the core of Linkin Park without necessarily trying to recreate what Linkin Park has done in the past. I will say that the verses are kind of weak and they seem kind of poorly put together, but the chorus is hands down the strongest chorus on the album. It is so good. And then the bridge towards the end of the song is quite possibly the strongest showing from Mike on this album. And then the way that this song kind of wraps up, it transitions to the intro of From Zero as if the whole song is supposed to be played on a loop. Just kind of, it works well for me. I don't know how well that would work with, physical media, but I mean, who really listens to physical media these days other than myself? At the end of the day, I feel like this was a decent attempt from Linkin Park to kind of showcase like the past, the present, and the future of the band, even if some of it was done a bit poorly and a bit distastefully. All in all, I think this was as a standalone album on its own, not comparing it to the rest of what Linkin Park has in their discography, is a pretty solid album compared to everything else that Linkin Park has put out. I'd have to put it in like middling for their discography. Like, it definitely does not hold a candle to the first two albums. I'd pretty closely put it on par with something like Minutes to Midnight, which was not a fan of when it first came out, but over the years it has really grown on me. That being said, I've never been a fan of any of Linkin Park's stuff post Minutes to Midnight. There are a few songs here and there that really started to grow on me. Songs like Heavy or Burn It Down, stuff like that. But for the most part, I fell off the Linkin Park train after Minutes to Midnight. And the fact that Linkin Park returning from this 7-year hiatus after the death of Chester Bennington with a new singer and supposedly this new style, it got me really excited to see what the future held for Linkin Park. And I was waiting with bated breath for this album to drop. When I finally got to hear it all in its entirety, it just was a bit lackluster. And maybe that's just me. Maybe I've grown as a person over the past, 15 years. Though a lot of the songs do come off as derivative of earlier eras of Linkin Park, I think that that's something that I personally may dislike, but the average listener may enjoy. I could see somebody getting enjoyment out of the fact that there are so many different elements of Linkin Park throughout the years put together on this one album. It's almost like the Linkin Park greatest hits that we never got, but it's all new material. I do think a lot of the songwriting and the lyrics are a bit lackluster, especially since Mike has been working with Emily since 2019. I think they've had, 5 years now to put together some solid bangers, and honestly, there's just not a lot of that on this album. But at the end of the day, what do I know? I'm not a producer. I am the edgiest boy. I unironically own a BC Rich. Hell, I'm barely even a musician. Look at any of the songs on my YouTube channel, and none of them hold a candle to any of the things that are on this album. But let me know what you think. Do you agree with me? Am I wrong? Am I the odd man out here? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you like this, hit the subscribe button, and who knows? I might end up putting out a couple more of these videos here in the future, but see how this one does.